All right, good morning and welcome to our May edition of the Greater Minnesota Shared Mobility webinars. Today's webinar is Moving Towards Driverless, Connected and Autonomous Vehicles in Transit and Shared Mobility. My name is Elliot McFadden. I am the Greater Minnesota Shared Mobility Coordinator in the Office of Transit and Active Transportation at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And want to give you a little bit of background on these webinars. We started them last fall as a program of the Greater Minnesota Shared Mobility Program. And this is an opportunity to share and familiarize you with the different mobility technologies and services that are out there and emerging, both in Minnesota and around the country. And it's a platform for knowledge sharing so that you can potentially take what you learn back to your community and look at implementing new and innovative solutions. All of our webinars right now are scheduled on the second Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. Our next webinar will be Wednesday, June 9th at 11. And we will be sending out an invitation in the next few days. If you were invited on this webinar, you will also receive a invitation to that once we have set that the theme for that meeting. And if you have anybody on your staff or anyone you know who you think ought to be attending these, please feel free to email me, elliot.mcfadden@state.mn.us, and I will be happy to add them as an invitee so that they get included in future webinars. If you miss any of the webinar today, note we are recording, and this will be posted on the MnDOT website as well as all of the presentations, so you can follow up there. And with that, we will kick off and jump into our first presenter today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Tara Oles. She is the Deputy Director of the Connected and Autonomous Vehicle Office, or CAVX office at MnDOT. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about what's going on with MnDOT and a very innovative pilot that's going to be happening in the Rochester area. And with that, Tara, you're welcome to take over.
Thank you, Elliot. And thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be able to share a little bit about our project down in Rochester that we're excited to be able to move forward with here in 2021. As Elliot mentioned, my name is Tara Oles. I am the Deputy Director of the MnDOT's Connected and Automated Vehicles Office. I want to share a little bit about our program before I jump into the project, just to kind of give you some context of how this project fits into some of the goals that we're trying to move forward with here in our state with regards to connected and automated vehicles. So first off, we like to think of transportation as really at the center of so many things that we do within our society. We believe that it can be transformative in the future that we create, that transportation systems have the ability to really connect us to better economy, better healthcare, better educational opportunities. We additionally know that with that, transportation can help us connect to more communities. We also think that if transportation moves forward in the way that we all want it to, that we can create a more equitable society. Based on the fact of creating more opportunities, more connections. And then lastly, by doing it right as well, we know that there could be a substantial, significant impact to the environment, and we're hoping that that would be in a positive way. So with that, we like to think of transportation policy that if it's done right, we really can improve the quality of life, our general well-being, as well as our general happiness as well. So we're excited to kind of continue advancements in the connected and automated vehicle arena and understand how the communities would like to see that advanced as well to meet their needs. I also want to just do a quick note on different levels of automation, as I don't know everybody's familiarity with that. We do have 6 different levels that are recognized for automation, starting with level 0 at the very left side. That really has no automation. That's your older model vehicles that don't have any sort of assistance, and really the human has to do absolutely everything in a vehicle. Something that we've seen a lot more of over the last several years is level 1, where we call that driver assist. There's a number of different vehicles that we see that have this type of technology, and these are things like lane keeping assist, automated braking, and even parallel parking. So a number of different things that we're starting to see. When we jump up to level 2 for automation, that's where you have partial automation because there's 2 of these automated features that can take place at once. An example of this type of vehicle would be a Tesla Autopilot. We see a significant jump between level 2 and level 3. Level 1 and level 2 we consider automated driving assist systems, where when we get to level 3 through 5, we really consider those autonomous. And that's where a level 3 is conditional automation, where you need to have a human behind the vehicle to monitor different activities and take over in certain situations. Currently, there's no vehicle on US roadways that fits this category, but we do see the Audi A8 in Europe. And then level 4 is the one that we're going to highlight a little bit more today. This is where we consider high automation. We can use it can be a vehicle that is driverless in certain arenas, as well as at certain speeds. And the Easy Mile shuttle that is a picture here, and one of the partners that we're working with in Rochester is an example of this. And then lastly, level 5, that's what we consider full automation, where you never need a human driver or an operator to take over in any condition, in any environment. And currently, there are a couple companies that claim to have level 5 automation, but quite frankly, they're still in a very controlled environment. So therefore, we haven't seen that really become a reality yet. So why are we doing this project? One of the main reasons we like to highlight this project is because we recognize the ability for connected and automated vehicles to really transform the society, like I mentioned earlier. And with that, we want to make sure that people are aware of what connected and automated vehicle technology is, what it isn't, what it could be, what it could not be, and what policies we need to start creating here in our state to make sure that we're addressing the community's needs. We want to make sure that people understand what those different levels of automation are, what we currently see on the roadways today. We know that the more people are exposed to connected and automated vehicles, the more they like to start seeing advancements in innovation and more research done in connected and automated vehicles. One thing I like to make sure we highlight is we don't really think of this work as trying to gain public acceptance or selling the technology. We aren't here to convince communities that CAD is the right solution and the best solution. Rather, we want to make sure that we're building trust, preparing and growing relationships, and informing people of what opportunities there could be, and making sure that we move forward in a collaborative way for the best environment for our state. So getting to the Rochester project. This is a project we're really excited about. It's been in the works for several years and unfortunately was delayed due to COVID, as I'll mention a little bit later. But this project was originally selected through the Minnesota CAD Challenge program. It's an open enrollment program we have where vendors, traditional and non-traditional partners can propose different projects that help us meet some of the issues or address some of the issues that we've identified that we see here in Minnesota with connected and automated vehicle technology providing opportunities. So with that, our partners, First Transit, proposed to have 2 level 4 automated shuttles by Easy Mile. They're EZ10s, which are low-speed shuttles that can carry up to 12 passengers if you have 6 seated and belted and 6 standing. However, with the current NHTSA requirements, we're only going to be able to accommodate 6 passengers at all times seated, in addition to an operator. And then, like I mentioned, it is a level 4 vehicle, so there will be no steering wheel or pedals. And with that, the driver, or there will not be anticipated to need any manual override on the route that we have determined. There is an onboard ambassador that does have the ability to take over operation from the shuttle if needed, address any emergency situations, and quite frankly, just make sure that we're moving forward and the technology is working appropriately. This is on a project route in downtown Rochester. So we're really excited that it's an urban route, providing an opportunity to really integrate with multimodal traffic. We anticipate it being open for 12 months. So we're hoping to start that here in the next few months here later this summer. And it's going to be open to the public, free of charge. So anybody can ride it if they're down in Rochester. I'm really excited about that. I did mention we did delay it due to COVID-19. It was supposed to move forward in 2020. We delayed it obviously due to physical distancing requirements. So there were some challenges with ensuring we could create a safe environment on the smaller shuttle. We also knew that introducing technologies during a time of so much uncertainty and a pandemic can be really challenging as well. So we were trying to be strategic about when to introduce this shuttle to the communities. A few project partners I want to highlight. So I mentioned MnDOT is the project lead, and we're working with a number of different other folks, including the city of Rochester, who has been a fabulous partner. They're helping us with upgrading some signal infrastructure and making sure that we're meeting the needs of their city since this is taking place on city roadways. Also, we have Mayo Clinic and Destination Medical Center. As many of you are probably familiar, big draw to the downtown Rochester area is the medical facilities. And so we've been partnering with them to ensure that we're able to market this and provide opportunities for people to learn more about connected and automated vehicles. And then lastly, our technology partners. Couldn't do this without them. Like I mentioned, they're the ones that proposed this project. First Transit is the transit operator that will be running the shuttles. when we have them live down in downtown Rochester. And Easy Mile is the shuttle provider, and they are out of France. And so it's been really fun to work with all of these different partners, make sure that we're meeting all of the needs and moving forward and advancing the project successfully. A few project goals I just want to highlight. We have winter weather on there. I'm sure it's not new to any of you, but winter weather is something we see here often in Minnesota. One thing we've recognized is that when you look at connected and automated vehicle testing, a lot of it's done in warm weather and dry climates. And so there's a great opportunity for us to understand how do these types of technologies work in Minnesota in winter weather when we have blizzards, when we have snow on the ground. So we're working with the technology providers and the shuttle manufacturers to make those advancements. Additionally, we have infrastructure. We know that there's some infrastructure upgrades that we need to make sure that we're able to implement prior to the project to ensure that there's proper communication through signals in the shuttle. And we're excited to be able to verify that that type of technology is successfully working here in our state. I mentioned earlier, public education is a main component of this project. We want to educate what the benefits, opportunities are afforded by this type of technology, and make sure we're understanding if this type of technology or these types of projects are meeting their needs, what people would like to see next, and just really starting that conversation to understand what people, where people are with connected and automated vehicles. And then lastly, mobility. We know that there's a potential to increase mobility with these types of automated shuttles. We recognize that this is similar to a transit experience, but we're not looking considering it a transit alternative because we want to make sure this is really more about the opportunity to see, touch, experience, feel what it is like to ride in an automated vehicle. But we know that this will help create more opportunities for people to think about what that mobility opportunity could be in the future. So where is the shuttle going to be? It's going to be in downtown Rochester, like I mentioned, and the route follows along Center Street along the north, along Broadway Avenue along east, along 6th Street along the south portion of the route, and along 3rd Avenue on the west side. The shuttle that is going to be operating is very similar to the shuttle that's shown in this photo here, and you can see that it is ADA accessible. There have been some updates made from that shuttle that's shown in the photo that was here in 2018. We worked with Easy Mile on our project at that point, and it's led to direct advancements in their technology. And so, like I mentioned, we're using the Easy 10s on this project, and we're excited to see what the advancements have moved forward and continue to help make those other future advancements. So this route was determined in coordination with all project partners. It's not to serve as a transit purpose, but really rather that opportunity to ride and experience AV technology. There are 3 stops along it. The one on the east side is at an entrance of a major hotel. So we're excited that that might provide opportunities for visitors, conference attendees, folks from out of town to be able to see and experience what connected automated vehicles are, but also show them that Minnesota's leading in some of this work. Second, we have on the south end of the project, the co-op grocery store. So opportunity to maybe, run between lunch and use the technology if people are working in downtown and going over to the co-op at different times. And then the 3rd stop would be at the Mayo Clinic. We all know it brings in people not just from Minnesota, but around the world. So this route provides a lot of exposure to ridership, but it also allows for the vehicle to be on street with live multimodal traffic. A couple things I wanted to highlight as well. A major component of this is communications and engagement. So we're working with some consultant partners right now to really highlight what the key messaging of this project is, develop a public website, and also develop public brochures. Making sure that we're passing along the right information, the transparent, correct information is key. We've done a lot of work over the last year understanding that people are getting information from everywhere, and sometimes it's not always the most honest or truthful. So we want to be very transparent about what we're doing on the project. We do plan on having a series of different events, including a launch event. Hopefully we're able to do that later this fall or summer, fall when we move to public ridership on the project. But we are kind of holding off to see what that can look like because trying to plan that during a pandemic is still very challenging. We'll also be coordinating with media outlets at different key milestones. We know people will be excited to know how is it performing when the first snowfall happens or in a major rain event. So we'll be coordinating that accordingly. We're hoping to have a social media presence. So if there's questions and there's comments, we can engage with people in a more interactive way. And then 2 areas to highlight that are going to be critical to the success of the project, as well as making sure that we prepare in advance with the crisis protocol and response plan, as well as training emergency service providers, making sure that this is safe, that everybody understands what the technology is, how to work with the technology in the shuttles and operate them will be a key component. So we're moving forward with that here as the summer continues. And so the last thing I just wanted to highlight is what is our planned schedule? This is the photo of the shuttle that is in downtown Rochester. As we are preparing for the project, there will be two. And so if you see them in this yellow, purple, orange color, you'll be able to recognize them. But we are moving forward with some infrastructure upgrades and testing and preparation here in the summer of 2021. We are hoping to have a public launch and have public riders be able to ride it for free at any time in summer or late summer or early fall here of this year. Like I mentioned, we're planning on 12 months of operation to really get those 4 seasons, understand how is it working at all times here in Minnesota, as we know that we have some unique weather opportunities. And then the hours of operation, we're planning on starting at 9 a.m. every day, and then Monday through Friday ending at 3:30 and ending at 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. So we've coordinated that with the city of Rochester with regards to rush hour traffic, trying to create as much opportunity for us to get operational hours on the roadway and interacting with live traffic, but at the same time recognizing some of the challenges already that exist in the downtown Rochester area. So those hours could end up changing. We're going to be flexible and see how we can coordinate with our transit provider to provide as much opportunity. So stay tuned, and we're hoping to be able to provide any changes and updates to our future website that we will be creating here in the next month that will be able to provide that real-time information. So I will pause there, and Elliot, if there are any questions, I am happy to take any at this time.
Yeah, hold on, let me see here. I posted in the chat. Tara unfortunately has to run and won't be able to be with us at the Q&A at the end. But so if you have any questions for her, now would be a good time to go ahead and put it in the chat. I don't have anything yet, but I had a couple of just questions that I thought might be kind of helpful to think about it. You were very, in the presentation, you talked a lot about how it's going to be the circulator. It's complementary, I guess, to transit, but it's not going to be transit. Can you talk a little bit about sort of how you're going to coordinate or how that will kind of work with the existing transit system with Rochester Public Transit, kind of how those two, this system will work with that, or will it be kind of more isolated?
Yeah, thanks, Elliot. So in talking with the transit providers down in Rochester, we recognized that we needed to look at just using this as an opportunity to test the technology. And so it is very much isolated from other transit operations. It's not trying to serve as an alternative route or provide any true purpose. This route is quite short in reality, and it's really just trying to gain that exposure. In the future, if we were looking at providing any sort of real transit alternative, we would have very close coordination with any transit partner in any city we would work with, understanding that when we talk about connected and automated vehicles, there's some substantial impacts to our transit partners, and want to make sure that they're at the table and really on board supporting it and addressing their concerns and needs as well.
Great. And then one other thing, I know that you're always looking with your office at new opportunities to do CAV projects throughout the state. Did you want to touch on if any of our partners around the state see an opportunity? Kind of what's the process that people kind of, do they reach out to you and get the conversation going? How does that work?
Yeah, thank you again. That's a great question, Elliot. So I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this project came through the CAV Challenge program. Like I mentioned, innovative program where vendors, partners, traditional and non-traditional, can propose different projects that really help us achieve some of the goals that we've set forth in our CAV strategic plan and business plan. So if anyone has any ideas or would like to just have any opportunities to collaborate and coordinate, discuss, see what opportunities there could be, my executive director, Kristen White, and I would be happy to meet with anybody at any time, but there's also the formal way to go through the CAV Challenge program. I can put a link in the chat box here afterwards for folks where you can read a little bit more, but it's open enrolling at any time. We have a dedicated amount of money every year that we're able to fund on different projects. We've seen projects that have been helping with infrastructure testing. We've seen projects that have been looking at planning different corridors, what we can do for the future of CAV. And so there's a wide variety of different things. And if anyone has any ideas with regards to transit, we would love to have those opportunities to coordinate in the future.
Great. Thanks so much. And I really appreciate you taking the time to present today. Can't wait to get a chance to try it out. So folks, especially in the transit world, make your way down to Rochester over the next year once this is launched to give it a try so you can see how this might be something that in the future could be implemented in your community. So I really appreciate it, Tara.
Thank you, Elliot. And feel free to reach out to me by email if there's any additional questions.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, we're going to move on to our next speaker now. So Mitch Granger is the Managing Director of Workforce and Economic Development at Drive Ohio, which is working on smart mobility and connected vehicles with the Ohio DOT. And they have a program that is focused specifically on rural areas and CAV, which I think is of great interest to our greater Minnesota system. So with that, Mitch, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Elliot, and good morning, everybody. Greetings from Ohio, where it might be just slightly warmer than in Minnesota, but not by much. It's a cool spring right now. Great to be here and glad to share some information about the Automated Driving Systems Project, looking at automated trucks and vans in rural Ohio. Let me get these slides moving. There we go. So just a quick orientation on Drive Ohio. Very, very common objectives with what you heard about the CAVX team in Minnesota. Drive Ohio is an initiative of the Ohio Department of Transportation, along with our Fly Ohio initiative. We're the state center for smart mobility, which we consider to be automated, connected, and electric vehicles and infrastructure on the ground and in the air. And this state map just gives some sense of the variety of locations of different projects and corridors, some of which need to be added, and there's always new things coming and going on this list. So a lot of excitement around this technology. We see a lot of opportunity. We're focused on the impact of how this will improve safety, improve mobility for everyone, improve accessibility of transportation, improve the reliability of the transportation network. We also think about the impact on talent. My role at Drive Ohio includes workforce development and economic development, thinking about smart mobility, jobs, and talent. So that's sort of our portfolio, and we're going to zoom into Southeast Ohio now and talk about a project called Automated Driving Systems. And as we get into the details of that project, we ask ourselves, well, what about rural? What is it about rural that makes this project unique, and why did we focus on that particular setting for this particular project that was federally funded? So when you look at the Appalachian region of Ohio, part of the wider multi-state Appalachian region, you see some statistics shown here that talk about different outcomes, health outcomes, economic outcomes. There are challenges, and transportation mobility is a theme that comes up frequently when we talk with our community partners in the Appalachian region. You can see some relatively higher rates of poverty and unemployment, some health challenges, and now this data is from a few years ago and pre-pandemic, but I think we've all experienced during the last year that some of the divides that were already in place in some ways have gotten worse, unfortunately, or have at least become even more obvious than they might have been before. So whether that's talking about populations with disabilities, populations with particular chronic illness like diabetes, you start to talk about, how can we improve access to healthcare, access to education and jobs, access to food and other important resources. And we think transportation mobility can be an equalizer in these areas when we look at some of these new technologies. And when you talk about the rural environment, every state and every region has its story and its characteristics. In Southeast Ohio in particular, you've got some geographic and economic differences. In terms of the geography, you've got hills, you've got dense foliage, you've got some gaps in communication. So whether that's sometimes GPS signal and or cellular, it's just the connectivity is different. And that's kind of really, I think, a national trend in rural areas. There's a big, statewide and really national discussion about broadband access right now, and those are important conversations that are nested into this project that we're talking about here. And we can't, we've covered a lot of ground just with the issues I'm talking about here, so we can't solve for all of that. But the question for this project is, how can automated vehicles in particular potentially start to chip away at some of these concerns we've been talking about, And then, how can that maybe help to become an accelerator for the regional economy, and look at ways to make this really sort of a test bed for these new types of connectivity and automation technologies. So let's talk in particular about this automated driving systems project, what it is and what the objectives are. So the Drive Ohio ADS project is focused on connected and automated trucks and vans in rural settings to improve safety and to improve accessibility and mobility. You can see a whole variety of public and private partners are involved. The anchor for this project is a federal grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation, a $7.5 million grant that we were grateful to receive through the Automated Driving Systems Grant Project through the Secretary of Transportation's office. With local and partner matches, the whole project budget is about $18 million over 4 years. That includes that grant plus the match. And we'll talk in a little bit about the schedule of activities, but you can see you've got a variety of partners. You've got the Transportation Research Center in East Liberty, Ohio, one of North America's largest proving grounds for automated and connected and other types of vehicles. You've got the Ohio Department of Transportation, of course, University of Cincinnati, Ohio University in Athens and Southeast Ohio, the Ohio State University, and then several different technology partners. And I'll talk throughout this presentation about how partners like Autonomous Stuff and Bosch and others factor into what we're doing, with some support here from a few others, including our Economic Development Agency of Jobs Ohio and their regional partners in the southeast part of Ohio. So this may look a little familiar now. Tara showed the different levels of automation, and in this case, levels 2 and 3 are what we're talking about for this program. Level 2 for trucks and level 3 for vans, and I'll unpack that a little bit more and share some detail on what exactly we'll be demonstrating over the course of this 4-year program that's already in progress. So let's start with truck automation. So we're talking about level 2 automation technology from Bosch that will be integrated onto Navistar trucks. And we'll have 2 different trucks that will be integrated into daily fleet operations. Now, when you're talking about level 2, you might remember that means you're combining a few different advanced driver assistance features. One of the features that we'll be looking at here is the potential for platooning, having 2 trucks following each other closely. And just to zoom out for a second, when we talk about the ODOT mission, our focus is on the safe, effective, and equitable movement of people and goods. In this case, we're talking about the movement of goods. We'll talk a little bit about movement of people and goods when we talk about the van platform. So for trucking, we're looking at opportunities to platoon 2 trucks together when it makes business sense. We recognize that not all fleets operate in that way, and so sometimes that mode of operations might be applicable, other times not. But regardless, we are looking at integrating fleet activities into this project. So we're in the process of talking with local and regional fleet operators who might be interested in partnering with us to integrate these 2 technology-enabled trucks into their fleet for daily operations. So rather than just running empty trucks for research purposes, we also want to understand how this technology integrates into the flow of commerce in Southeast Ohio in rural settings. So that's the primary focus for the truck automation piece of the project. And then the second major deployment activity will be focused on automation of passenger vans. Specifically, we'll be using 3 Ford Transit vehicles outfitted with level 3 automation. So now you can have situations where the vehicle is handling some of the decisions. We'll always have a driver on board. That driver needs to be fully attentive and ready to take over when notice is provided. And so, these types of vans, it probably looks familiar with all the deliveries that you see in any given neighborhood. So you could be talking about package delivery, last mile delivery with a van like this. You could also be talking about some mixture of paratransit or other rural transportation services, maybe getting people access to healthcare appointments, maybe access to jobs and employment. So in this case, for the van, we will not be integrating this into daily commerce. In other words, we won't be having passengers, we won't be having package deliveries happening with these vans at that higher level of automation. This is more about the research to understand how the level 3 automated vans operate in a rural setting with all those conditions I talked about earlier, with hills, with some challenges to connectivity, sometimes with gravel roads, limited sight lines. All those variables we're going to have design of experiment that goes into the route selection for this project to understand, what are the routes that we want to deploy on that are representative of those different use cases we've talked about. And then how can we understand how the infrastructure looks and interacts with this technology. We want to meet the infrastructure where it's at. And what we'd like to do with this project is really encourage technology developers to both understand the environment and to hopefully bend the technology development around infrastructure as it exists, as opposed to leaving rural communities behind because the infrastructure doesn't look a certain way that the technology expects it to. So we want to have a lot of give and take between technology providers and communities to make sure that the digital divide and the technology divide doesn't become exacerbated as these new technologies come to market. A major activity and focus of this project, in addition to the deployments, is data collection. That's what the U.S. Department of Transportation is really looking for out of this initiative, and we're going to deliver on that with several different types of data shown here. We'll have some continuous data, some event-specific data, and then some map data that'll be collected. That will coordinate that closely with USDOT. That'll be shareable with other research organizations over a period of several years. We're one of many states that are part of the NHTSA's AV test initiative. There's a lot of different ways that we'll publish out this data and share it out to make sure that it provides everybody across the country with a better understanding of automated vehicle operations in rural environments. I mentioned some of the routes are under discussion. If you were to zoom into Southeast Ohio, Athens and the village of MacArthur, shown in the upper right and lower left corners here, are the two communities that we're looking at connecting, especially for the van routes and for trucking as possible. The trucking routes will be informed a little bit by, well, quite a bit actually, by the flow of commerce. And so that there may be some other routes considered as part of the trucking piece of it. I mentioned the schedule. It's a 4-year program. We're in the middle of planning, system engineering, and stakeholder engagement ongoing right now. And then some of the deployments will start to really kick in calendar year 22. Some of the equipment's already being purchased and spec'd out and delivered at the moment. So that's, and then the data will be accessible even beyond the life of the project. So with that provides an overview of the Ohio ADS project. Appreciate your time and attention today. I know we'll take some questions at the end. And with that, I'll turn it back to Elliot. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, I think that's very exciting, especially as we look in Greater Minnesota. There's a lot of things we can learn from the work that you're doing. So that's exciting. I appreciate it. We will now move to our final presenter. Ann Foss is the principal planner in the Office of Strategic Initiatives at the City of Arlington, Texas, and they have already been doing some innovative work in micromobility and are now looking at adding connected and autonomous vehicle technology with the projects that they've been working on there. And so, Ann, take it away.
All right. Can you guys see my slides?
We can. It's showing right now it's not showing in the presentation mode, but there it is. That looks good. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Elliot. I'm happy to be here talking with you guys today. I am a principal planner in the Office of Strategic Initiatives at the City of Arlington in Texas. So a little bit of a different scale and scope, working for municipal government as opposed to the DOTs that we've heard from so far today. But today I'm going to talk about our AV pilots that we have done. We've done 3 here in Arlington, and some of our innovative transportation solutions more broadly. And our most recent pilot, which we just launched in March, integrates autonomous vehicles into our existing public rideshare service. So I'll give a little bit of background on the context here in Arlington, for those of you who may not be familiar, and then our rideshare service, as well as our first 2 AV pilots, and then some more details on what we're doing right now. So Arlington is located in the north central part of Texas. We are the 48th largest city in the United States. We have a population of almost 400,000 spread out over 99 square miles. So pretty suburban, low density setting. We're kind of right in the middle between Dallas and Fort Worth. And we had the dubious distinction of being the largest city in the United States without any form of public transportation for a long time. We've never had traditional public transit, no buses, no light rail. So city staff has been tasked with coming up with creative solutions to get around some of the political and financial barriers to providing traditional transportation. We do have a lot of people that come in and out of Arlington. We do have a large entertainment district, AT&T Stadium, where the Dallas Cowboys play, and then Globe Life Field, where the Texas Rangers play, as well as other amusement parks and destinations. So we have about 14 million visitors that come into Arlington during a normal year. Obviously, this past year has been pretty different. And then we also have a large campus in the UT system. The University of Texas at Arlington has approximately 40,000 on-campus students, again, in a traditional year. So a lot of people coming in and out of Arlington and needing to move around within Arlington. So one of the things that we have done is we've launched an on-demand rideshare service. And this was done in partnership with VIA. And the service launched at the end of 2017, and we've expanded incrementally each year. And then most recently, in January of this year, we expanded to cover the entire city. So all 99 square miles are covered, so people can ride anywhere within the city. At the time when we launched this, we were one of the first cities in the US to have rideshare as our only public transportation solution. And we have found over the years that this has been a really successful option for the setting here in Arlington. It's personalized and efficient for riders because they can get picked up whenever and wherever they want to take a ride. And then the service is very flexible and scalable for the city, which has been quite helpful, especially this past year. We've been able to scale way back on our service when COVID hit last year, and then incrementally expand up again as demand has returned. So it's also been very cost efficient for us. Just a little bit of detail so you get some context here. As I said, it does cover the entire city of Arlington, and then we connect to a regional rail station just outside of the city limits, allowing people to transfer and connect to the larger region. We operate Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Saturdays 9 to 9. We have a set fare between $3 and $5, which is determined by distance. And then we also have a weekly pass for frequent riders. The service is primarily done through VIA's free smartphone application, which accepts credit cards, debit cards, and prepaid cards to help make it a little bit easier for folks to pay. And then we also do have a local phone number where people can call in, speak to a live customer service representative, and book their rides if they don't want to use the smartphone application. Right now, we have a fleet of 68 six-passenger vans. 14 of those are ADA compliant wheelchair accessible vans. And it's a mix between Mercedes Metris and Toyota Sienna hybrid electric vehicles right now. And then just a little bit of kind of performance stats on how this service has performed for us. Right now, over the whole term of the service since the end of 2017, we've given almost 600,000 rides, and we have almost 60,000 unique accounts that have been set up. We average about 12 minutes of wait time for each ride, and we have a very high rider satisfaction rate, which we're really pleased with. And the heat map shown here for drop-off request locations, again, you're not familiar with the borders of Arlington, but basically these dots show you the city limits, and you can see that people are really using the service to go everywhere within our city. The area that is darkest is the area where we have had service the longest. And then as we have expanded, you start to see those dots fill in. But we're really able to provide a lot more access throughout the entire city than we would be with traditional fixed transit. So with that context and a little bit of background on that rideshare service that we're providing, I'm going to move into our autonomous vehicle testing and pilots that we've done. I'll briefly talk about our first two pilots just to give you some kind of context of our trajectory and phased approach, and then I'll focus more on our current deployment. So our first pilot we called Milo, and that was a play on the idea of mile zero, or getting people to their final destination. And it was the first autonomous shuttle offered by a municipal government to the public on a continuous basis in the US, which is kind of a lot of qualifiers, but we were really excited to be able to offer this service starting in August of 2017. It was open to the public, it was free to ride, and it operated in our entertainment district, connecting some of the stadium destinations to remote parking lots to help make it easier for folks to get to events there. We used two of the Easy Mile Easy 10 shuttles, which you heard Tara talking about earlier. They were first generation shuttles. We definitely learned a lot and I think helped Easy Mile identify some issues. Big one here in Texas is air conditioning. One of the most frequent complaints that we got about this vehicle was that it was too hot. So I know that Easy Miles ramped up their air conditioning in subsequent generations. So they're fully electric. We could hold up to 12 riders at a time, and then they have the ramp for wheelchair access. The shuttles have an average speed of about 15 miles an hour. On our routes, which were off-street, a network of pedestrian bicycle trails that was existing in the area, they averaged more like 6 to 8 miles per hour. We did always have a trained operator on board. I was actually one of those trained operators, so I logged a lot of hours out there with the shuttles. But then we also contracted with First Transit for daily operations. And we had two program goals, and this is definitely in line with what we've heard from Tara and Rich so far today. We really wanted to test the technology in a real world environment, find out what works, what doesn't work, what are good use cases. And then we really wanted to provide public education and awareness on autonomous vehicles, hoping that as people are exposed to the technology, become more comfortable with it, they might become more accepting. But we really wanted to just have it out there for our citizens and visitors to experience. So a little bit of performance data on the Milo pilot. Over the year that we operated, the shuttles were active at a total of 113 events and gave a little over 1,600 rides total. We did do an onboard survey asking folks for some feedback on the experience. 99% of riders said that they enjoyed riding and felt safe on Milo. And then 97% of riders supported self-driving technology more broadly. So building on the success of Milo, we moved on to our second phase of AV testing, which was a partnership with Drive AI for on-street AV operations. So this pilot started in October of 2018. It was the first Drive AI pilot in the US that was open to the general public. And again, like Milo, it was free to ride for the public. We originally planned for this to be a 1-year pilot program, but we did have to cut operations short. We ended at the end of May in 2019 when Drive AI was purchased by Apple, who shut down their operational side. So we operated a fleet of between 3 and 5 of these Nissan NV200 vans that were retrofitted by Drive AI to be able to operate autonomously. We drove on public streets in our entertainment district at speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. So we served some of the stadiums, convention center, hotels, and office buildings in the area. The vehicles could seat 2 people comfortably, and they were, certified to operate on public streets. And then we did always have a trained operator. A Drive AI employee was on board operating the vehicles for safety and customer service at all times. And then a little performance here. Over the 8 months that we had this pilot operational, the service operated for a total of 151 days and completed just over 750 trips with about 1,400 passengers or rides given. And we didn't have any safety incidents or concerns with either of these 2 pilots. So again, very, very happy with that outcome. So Then we move into our current AV pilot, which we call Arlington Rapid. And this is where we have integrated autonomous vehicles onto our existing rideshare service with VIA. So this project has received funding from FTA, their Integrated Mobility Innovation Grant Program. We received $1.7 million, and we got notification of this award in March last year, right as everything was shutting down for COVID. So we spent a year putting all of this together, and then we launched in March of this year. So RAPID stands for Rideshare Automation and Payment Integration Demonstration. And the city is partnering with VIA, who provides the rideshare service, May Mobility, who is providing the autonomous vehicles, and the University of Texas at Arlington, who's helping both with operational elements as well as research and evaluation. So we're integrating a fleet of 5 AVs onto the VIA rideshare service in a limited area. So it's about a 1 square mile area in our downtown and the UTA campus. We plan to operate this for 1 full year, and we believe it's the first time that an on-demand AV service has been integrated into an existing public transportation system in the US. So the main goal of this project is to demonstrate the combination of AV tech and on-demand tech to develop effective, efficient, safe, and accessible transportation networks. And we're really focused on this low density setting here in Arlington, where traditional fixed route transit can be impractical, and hoping that some of the lessons we learn here will be transferable to other similar communities. And then some of our key objectives include increasing access for seniors, students, and individuals with limited personal mobility, improving equity and accessibility to public transportation for everyone, improving safety and efficiency of our systems, and then sharing lessons learned widely beyond just our community. So here are some details on the vehicles that we're using for the Arlington Rapid service. As I mentioned, we have a fleet of 5 vehicles. 4 of them are Lexus RX 450 hybrid vehicles. They can carry up to 3 passengers in the back seat. And then we are using 1 Polaris GEM vehicle that is our wheelchair accessible vehicle. It is fully electric and can carry that 1 wheelchair passenger at a time. So you can see the Lexus vehicle there is on the top photo, and the Polaris GEM is in the lower photo. And then the 5 vehicles have been wrapped to be complementary with each other, as well as with our existing VIA rideshare service vans, so that they're kind of integrated into the fleet. It's clear that they're part of the broader service, but obviously they have all of the sensors on the vehicle, so they stand out as something different too. They do have multiple types of redundant sensors. So we have 7 cameras, a top-mounted long-range LiDAR system, 4 short-range LiDARs, and 5 radars arrayed around the vehicles. We do have a safety driver. May Mobility calls them fleet attendants. So they will be behind the wheel at all times during this deployment for safety, as well as customer service and education. And then obviously launching this during COVID, health safety features were very important. So we do have a partition that's in place between the driver and passenger compartments. We're doing daily deep cleans. Everyone is required to wear a mask in accordance with FTA policies. And then we also have a UVC light that's been installed above the passenger compartment that does a UV disinfecting dose in between each ride. So as I mentioned, the service area covers about 1 square mile. It's our downtown kind of civic core, as well as the UTA campus. We're operating Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. And then booking is done through the VIA system, so either their app or their call-in phone number. And when a rider books a ride, if the parameters of their ride meet the rapid service, so they're within our service area and our operating times, they will be offered both a traditional VIA van as well as a rapid vehicle ride. So they'll always have the option to opt in for an AV ride should they want to do that. And it is operating as an on-demand service, so it will pick up and drop off people within about a 1 to 2 block walk of wherever they request, whenever they request. And then the standard VIA fares do apply for this service as well. But we do have funding through the grant from FTA to make rides free for UTA students. So that's been a good incentive to get the students to ride and test out the technology. So a little bit of early performance. We've been in operation for about a month and a half, and we've learned a lot so far, for sure. We've been averaging around 35 rides per day. We really didn't know what to expect when we launched. Right now, a lot of businesses downtown are still at reduced capacity or working remotely, and the UTA campus is holding most of their classes remotely as well. So there's not a lot of people moving around downtown, but the campus and the city are returning to more in-person functions over the course of the summer. And UTA expects to have basically normal in-person operations on campus this fall. So we are definitely hopeful that we'll see our ridership start climbing over the next few months. Riders, we are deploying a couple of surveys right now to get feedback, and we'll do that throughout the course of the deployment. So riders report overall feeling safe, wanting to ride again. We definitely have a handful of riders who are kind of our frequent flyers. The fleet attendants have gotten to know them. They're riding several times a week. So that's great to see that. And then autonomy performance is pretty strong throughout our service area. Again, it's a 1 square mile. May Mobility mapped over 18 lane miles for the vehicles to travel on. So it's a lot of mapping and a lot of area for the vehicles to cover. And then we have seen success with that integration between VIA and May Mobility for booking and payment. So riders get the AV offer through the VIA app, and then the VIA app is actually dispatching the vehicles autonomously to the pickup and drop-off locations and the most efficient route between them. So that integration piece has been challenging on the back end for the May and VIA tech teams to put together, but has been really exciting to see that coming together. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks again for including me in the webinar today, and I look forward to questions here if we have time at the end.
Yeah, we have a few minutes here, and going to open it up if folks want to post in the chat any questions. I had a couple while we're seeing if anybody wants to add anything else. So Rich, I had a question to you about, are you seeing, especially as you're looking at rural areas, the infrastructure of conductivity being a big barrier right now? You know, the amount of infrastructure you have to interact with to connect these vehicles. Do you think that's going to be a major issue, or do you feel like the technology is evolving to kind of address that?
It's an important question, and really it's fundamental to the project. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, over the course of the next few years, we'll get more, you know, high fidelity answers to your question. The immediate answer would be a lot of these technologies do bring some of their own tech with them to sense and understand their environment. You know, you even heard versions of it in the urban setting with the other presentations talking about maybe a little bit of infrastructure here and there, especially at signalized intersections. So we're going to see. What I can tell you is that the state of Ohio knows that whether you're talking about automated and connected vehicles or just digital equity, for whatever reason, we've established an office called Broadband Ohio that's looking to dig into this topic for underserved communities, both urban and rural. And to show the integration of this technology, I don't think it's a coincidence that the two people running the Broadband Ohio office used to work at Drive Ohio. So we see these technologies all kind of, you know, in a big trade space. And I didn't even talk about electrification today, but we've got a major initiative on that topic too. So I don't doubt there's going to be some gaps with connectivity, and I think this multi-year project will help to really drill in and find some actionable insights that we hope to be able to share with communities everywhere. With all the great discussion, an important discussion about broadband that's happening right now.
Great. And I had one question for both of you. I'll start with Anne. So there's on the private sector side, there's been a lot of hype around, when we're going to get basically level 5 that you can park in your driveway. I have a joke that we were 18 months away 5 years ago. We'll be 18 months away 5 years from now in the PR side of things. But it strikes me that because of the nature of transit and shared mobility, I think those are going to be the places, as we're seeing in the pilots, but also long term, where people are going to experience AV first, right? That it's not going to be going to their dealership to buy a vehicle. So I guess to start with Anne, what are your thoughts on, you're on your third iteration of doing AV. What do you think as far as timelines of when we might start seeing this, at least in the transit or shared mobility space, as going beyond pilots and being more of like a regular service that people are starting to expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I completely agree with you on the timeline. I think, 4 years ago when the city of Arlington started working in this space, the hype was huge. And right, it was like 2 years from now, there's going to be AVs everywhere. We very quickly learned the limits of the technology. And, with each of our pilots, we have seen some improvements, but also still persistent challenges. I do agree that I think the shared space and, fleets and delivery services, cargo applications like Rich talked about are going to be some of the places where we see AV tech making the most strides more quickly. I think from a financial perspective, it makes more sense, and a scalability perspective. I hesitate to put a strict a timeline on something. We're obviously, this is a 1-year pilot. We are actively looking for funding and opportunities to be able to expand it. But right now the lift on the mapping side of things with a lot of the technologies that AV companies are using, they have to create this incredibly detailed, 3-dimensional map of their entire service area. And that takes a ton of time and effort, even for a pretty small area. So I think that's going to be one of the major limitations to seeing this technology roll out more broadly. But yeah, it's going to be years, not months, for sure.
Sure. Rich, from your perspective, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Anne. She summarized all those points very well. I would maybe just add that in addition to the technology itself, and we're always seeing new tech coming in. I mean, there's companies we know about, like one from Ohio that Oculi, that just launched a brand new type of software-enabled radar, and Argo is working with LiDAR. So the sensing will help. The other thing I think about is business models. How does this all get funded sustainably long term? Some of it may be creative. We've heard anecdotes of like real estate companies looking at this as maybe a way to enhance and differentiate their offerings. So there's all sorts of layered questions about safety comes first, of course, and then the business models are kind of a fast follower on how this all gets adopted. And the operating domain really dictates it. And I think you'll see niche cases and niche applications that then build out over time.
Great. Well, we are at time, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up our webinar for today. Rich and Anne and Tara, appreciate all coming and presenting and getting us thinking about the technology that's coming down the road and thinking about how we can deploy it in Minnesota. So again, thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate the conversation, and hope to see everybody else back here for our webinar in June. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.